Hey everybody, back here with another word that God has given me. I am very excited to share this word with you guys. We had a group at my house today, small turnout, but it was very good, very powerful. I think this message is, again, one that everybody needs to hear. I think this is one that everybody can relate to, so I'm very excited to share this with you. Before we get started, I just want to let you guys know if you guys have any prayer requests, comment below, let me know, and I'll be praying for you guys, okay? So we're going to be in Joshua chapter 13, verse 1, and it says, Joshua was now very old. The Lord said to him, You are very old, and there are still very large areas of land that have not been taken over yet. So if you've watched my other videos, I've been in Joshua and at least one other one. And Joshua has taken over for Moses after he died. He's leading the people of Israel to the promised land. They've been taking over all these lands and stuff. And at this point, Joshua is now old, as it said. And God said that there are still lots of lands that he needs to take over. But, he's old. And so you might be asking, how can somebody who's old still be able to defeat armies and take over all these lands? So that brings me to point number one, is that destiny doesn't have an age limit. So it doesn't matter if you're young or if you're old, what God has called you to do, you can do it. If you if you pray about it, if you seek after God, if you run after your purpose, if you block out everything that is distracting you from your purpose, people, social media, whatever it is, anything that distracts you from your purpose and distracts you from your relationship with God, if you block that out and replace it with, drive and passion to do what God has called you to do, it doesn't matter how young you are, how old you are, you can do what God has called you to do. And as long as you still have breath, you are here, so you still have a part in this world. You still have a job to do. And until God takes you up into heaven, you still have a part in this world, and you should not stop. No matter how old you are, don't stop. Keep running. If you're young, don't limit yourself because of your age. It doesn't matter. Do what you have a heart to do. Do what God is calling you to do. Even though God has our life planned out, we don't have to go his way. Now, let me be clear, I'm not saying don't go his way. We do want to go his way. His way is better for us and is good in the end, but we don't have to. You got to remember that you got to make sure you are focusing on what God is calling you to do. Because if we go our own route, sure, we may have success. I mean, there's plenty of people that aren't Christians that are very successful. But the thing is if you're not Christians, or if you're not following God's way, in the end, it's not going to turn out good. It's just not. You went your own way, and our ways will lead to destruction, death. And I know it sounds bad, but it's biblical. It's truth. God's way is filled with peace. It is filled with success. And even though on this journey to destiny, even though there are going to be times where we struggle, times where bad things happen to us, in the end, when we reach destiny, when we reach our final destination, we will see that everything that happened to us worked together to get us there. Nothing goes to waste, if we give it to God. So, maybe you're sick, like seriously sick, and you're in the hospital. That is obviously going to limit you in that time, but God doesn't waste that. He's going to use that to maybe drive you to get better and to get back up on your feet and to keep running. And maybe it's just to test your faith. Not everything that we go through, is to punish us. Now, sometimes it is because God is our Father, and just like any father, when we do something that we're not supposed to, we need to, have some sort of punishment, so that way we learn and we don't do it again. So when we sin, sometimes God will do something to correct us, show us, hey, you did something wrong, here's what's going to happen. And sometimes we'll go through this period of, maybe stuff isn't going our way, or maybe life just is going by kind of slow, nothing's really happening. God does all sorts of things, but it's never because he doesn't love us or he's angry at us. He's always proud of us because he knows that even though we sin, he made us. He knows our hearts and he's proud of us. So despite what you struggle with or what you've done in the past, that doesn't define who you are now. God is still proud of you, and he just wants the best for you. Fear and faith can't occupy the same space because fear and faith, they're complete opposites. If you are filling your mind with fear, like if you're fearful of whatever it is that is in front of you, you don't have faith. Even if you want to, you just don't, because they're just complete opposites, and they can't share spaces like in your brain. So if you're fearful, you don't have faith because you are too fearful. But if you have faith, you have so much trust that that fear doesn't have enough, room to come into your mind. So when we decide to have faith, we can't be afraid. And I know it's hard because there are things that scare us, and there will always be times when we're scared. But when we try to focus on, having faith in difficult times, we'll see that it helps with fear. It blocks it out. It may be able to creep in a little bit, but it's never going to be able to rush into our minds like it can if we just give into it. Faith is what keeps us from collapsing under the weight of fear. And, there's going to be times throughout our journey that, we're going to feel like we are just collapsing under this heavy weight. But when we have faith in God, faith that he will take the weight off of our shoulders, faith that he will walk this journey with us, and, if we fall, faith that he'll pick us up, when we fill our minds with this faith-filled attitude, and we go all in with faith, then fear just can't move into our minds or in our hearts. They can't share spaces. Fear and faith can't share spaces in our hearts or in our minds. You get to choose, and that's the other thing. You get to choose. Like I said in, I think, my very first video, fear is the belief that something or someone is a potential threat. So you are choosing to believe that something or someone is a potential threat. Fear is a choice. It's a hard choice, and it just kind of comes naturally at times, it seems like, but it's always a choice. So we have that choice to choose fear over faith or faith over fear. This is a really important point, and I hope this is one thing that if you don't get anything else from this video, I hope this is one thing you will take with you, is that the key to finding and reaching your destiny is perspective. Because what we go through in life, it looks different to people around us than what it does to us. Everybody has their own perspective of what is going on. So, maybe I'm going to use this as an example because this is pretty common, but a lot of people struggle with depression. So that depression, if you struggle with depression, that looks one way to you, but it's going to look a different way to maybe your friend. So it's all about the way you look at it and the way you see it. So if you're going through depression, what you focus on is going to be what becomes more. So let me clarify that. If you take a magnifying glass, right, when you put it, above something, it's bigger. It enlarges it, it magnifies it. So when you magnify depression over God, you're gonna be filled with more depression, and it's gonna make it worse than it already is. So we gotta switch our perspective from our problems over to God, who is our problem solver. We have to choose what we focus on, what we magnify in our lives, because if we magnify the wrong thing, we're gonna the way we see like God, like if we magnify depression over God, the way we see God is not gonna be, the way he is. We're gonna see him the wrong way because we are seeing more of our problem and less of him within the depression. Because God is with you in every situation, but when we magnify the depression or magnify whatever you're going through, you are having, you make God smaller. So you're not seeing as much of God in the situation, even though he's there, you're seeing more of the problem. So we have to be careful what we choose to magnify, because that's going to determine, how quickly or how much of our destiny we reach. Because, like I said, we all are going to go through hard times within our journey. But if you can keep your perspective on, on God and all the good things that are happening around you, then you are making smaller all of your problems, all of your insecurities, all your doubts. You're making that smaller and magnifying your strengths, the good things that are going on around you, the people that are around you supporting you, and most importantly, of course, God. So, magnifying and having the right perspective on your problems or the things you're going through is so, so important to reaching your destiny. And this point, it kind of goes along with that, is don't look at your weaknesses, look at your strengths. Because you have so much more strengths than you do weaknesses. But a lot of times, the weaknesses are easier to see. They're easier to find because people are judgmental of themselves. So when you are thinking of your weaknesses and your strengths, you will most likely always come up with more weaknesses because you are so judgmental of yourself. It's just human nature. It's just how we are. But when we choose to look at our strengths, we magnify the strengths, our weaknesses become smaller. And when we focus on those strengths, it builds that confidence within us that we can do whatever we put our hearts and our minds to, and whatever God has called us to do. When we focus on the strengths, we will have faith in ourselves that we can do it, and we'll have faith in God that he will get us through anything that's going to come in between us and our destiny. But when we focus on weaknesses, we're going to keep that's going to push us down. We're going to feel negatively about ourselves. We're not going to believe in ourselves that we're not going to believe that we're going to be able to do anything because of, for example, God, I think God has called me to write a book because it's hard for me to speak in front of people, even though he's called me to be a youth pastor. But if for some reason that were to fail, if I were to fail as a youth pastor, I'm still good at hearing God's voice. I'm still good at, thinking deeply, thinking, positive ideas, that if I can't speak it, I can easily write it. So if for some reason being a youth pastor were to just completely blow up in my face, I could easily write everything that I'm speaking to you right now and write it into a book. So, but I've tried a few times, I've tried writing different books, I've started, but as I start reading it, I think to myself, this isn't good enough to get published. It's not going to get published, and so I delete it. But, even if they don't get published, it's definitely not going to get published if I don't just keep going, if I don't just see it through to the end. So instead of, because I'm looking at my weaknesses, or it's not even a weakness, but I'm magnifying my doubts in that situation rather than, focusing on the promise that God has, said that he will bring forth whatever he's called us to do. What he has promised will come to pass. So instead of magnifying that, I'm magnifying my doubt, which causes me to want to restart, to want to make it perfect. But, it's never going to be perfect. Yeah, if I were to write a book, some people will be touched by it, some people won't. But it's all about trust in God and all about having confidence in yourself and God. And that brings me to another point, is that you can't have confidence in yourself if you don't have confidence in God. let's take your looks for example, because a lot of people struggle with, how they look. They don't like how they look, and I'll be honest, I felt that way before. But if we have confidence in God, because God created us, so if we focus on that, we're beautiful the way we are, because God created us. All of His creations are good, they're beautiful, they're perfect the way they are. So God created us, therefore we are beautiful automatically. Beautiful is a word that was created by people. So, everybody is going to be judged by the world based on their looks. Some people are more attractive than others, but what is attractive? Everybody has their own opinion, their own perspective of how people look, but if we look outside of that and look at the way God sees us, we're all beautiful. And so if we have confidence in that, that will make us confident in how we look. But if we're not confident in ourselves, that's because we're not confident in God, and we are believing that He, made a mistake, or He didn't make us beautifully. That's basically what we're saying. When we think we're ugly or too skinny, too fat, whatever it is, when we believe those things about us, we're saying, God, you messed up. I should look like this person, or that person. And we compare ourselves all the time to people that we want to look like, but we wouldn't be comfortable in their body. That's one thing that I've always struggled with. And, sometimes still do. It just kind of depends. But it helps me knowing that now, that the body we're in, it's perfect for us. We are us. We were made by God. We are beautiful and perfect the way we are. We would not be comfortable in somebody else's skin, even if they look better than ourselves to you. Like, if you think that somebody looks better than you, you still wouldn't be comfortable in their skin, because you're not meant to be them. You're not meant to look like them. You're not meant to talk like them. Whatever. Like, that's one thing I'm self-conscious about, is my voice. I don't like my voice personally, but I wouldn't, I'd be worse off with somebody else's voice. This is my voice. God gave it to me. And plus, I'm called to be a youth pastor, so I'm going to be using my voice a lot. I have to learn to just love my voice, because God gave it to me. And God gave me a voice of, wisdom. He gave me a voice of inspiration, and that's why He's called me to be a youth pastor, because He's called me to touch people with my voice and with my passion for my love for God. And that's just one of my strengths that He's given me. So sometimes, I'm self-conscious about my voice, but I have to learn to just love myself, love my voice, because God gave it to me. So going on to the next point, this is also another really important point. This one I want you to take with you. Don't look ahead at the path you're going on. Don't look ahead into the future. Look down, look at your feet, and take one step at a time. Look at the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. Don't look ahead, because when we look ahead, we are going to get discouraged. We're going to get overwhelmed. We're going to believe we don't have what it takes to do whatever God is calling us to do. But when we look at just the next step, a step isn't as overwhelming as 5 miles, right? Like, if you were running a race and you looked at how far you had to go, 5 miles, that's going to be overwhelming. But if you just think, all I need to do is just take one more step, that's not as overwhelming, and eventually you'll get to where you're going, and it'll be way quicker than you ever realized, because your focus is just on the next step or the next day, rather than 5 days from now or 5 years from now, whatever it is. You don't want to look way ahead into your future, because you're going to be overwhelmed and discouraged and scared. But when we just take life one day at a time, one step at a time, we won't be discouraged, and that's going to build up our faith for the future, and if we just take one step at a time, we'll get there. It'll be nice and slow, nice and steady. We'll build up strength, we won't be overwhelmed, and we'll just get there when we get there. I want to go to Matthew chapter 6, verse 34. And it says, "So don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough troubles of its own." So that kind of goes along with that point. Each day has enough troubles of its own, so don't worry about the future. Worry about this day that you're in. Worry about this moment that you're in, because you've already got enough going on. You don't need to add more to your plate. You've got enough going on. Focus on today. Focus on your problems today. Focus on your sins today. Don't worry about the sins you're going to commit tomorrow. Don't worry about the stuff you're going to have to go through tomorrow. That's just going to, push a bunch of weight on your shoulders and make you feel like you want to give up. So just focus on today. Focus on the moment you're in. And just take life one step at a time. This point also kind of goes along with all that, but you have everything you need for today's fight, because I feel like a lot of times we will think that we don't have maybe the looks or the connections or the voice or the body to do what God wants us to do. But whatever you're going through today, whatever fight you're going through, whatever race you're running to destiny, you have what you need for today. So if I were to, like for example, if I were to start writing a book today, like writing a new book, I would have some ideas to start writing down. So I'd write them down, right? Eventually, I would run out of ideas, because that's all I had for today. That's all the wisdom that God gave me. That's all that God spoke to me. But then tomorrow's a new day. A day that God's going to give me more wisdom. He's going to speak more to me. That's why people don't write books in a day. It takes years, because it's a process, and they have to just take one day at a time, because they don't have, like, authors don't have what they need to finish the book immediately. They have what they need to write maybe like a few pages or something. I mean, it just depends on how much God wants to give you, but what God gives you is enough. You don't need more or less or whatever. What you have is enough for that day. So if you come from like more of a poor family, even if you don't have a lot of money, you have enough for that day, because God is our supplier, and He's got our backs through everything. He's not gonna let us go down into the grave. He's not gonna let anything kill us. He's not gonna let anything harm us. He's gonna use everything and get us to where He wants us to be. And He's going to supply everything that we need for today's fight and tomorrow's fight and 5 years ago, whatever fight you're going through then. God's gonna give you everything you're gonna need. So don't worry about what you're gonna need for tomorrow, because you're not there yet. So just focus on what you have with you today, the people, the family, the strengths, whatever it is. Focus on what you've got today. Focus on what God has supplied you with today to fight the battle that you're going through. The book that I want to write is a perfect example of this. God, whatever He's promised, it will come to pass. So, if God has called me to write a book, that will come to pass. It'll happen. Maybe not in my own time. I mean, if it were up to me, I'd finish it in a week. But obviously that's not going to happen. It's going to happen whenever God says it's time to happen. And same thing with me being a youth pastor. God's called me to that. It'll happen. And maybe I'll go to a church and maybe I'll start doing really good, but then all of a sudden I get fired. That's going to look like a setback, but like I said in another video, that setback is really a setup to the next step of your destiny. So if I were to get fired from like the first church I start at, then that means I'm going to be better, or maybe inspire more people, impact more people, or whatever. I'm going to do more and grow more personally at the next church I go to. I'm just going to be able... Each setback is really your choice of whether it crushes you or you use it as a stepping stone to the next part of your life, next part of your journey to destiny. So you've got to make that choice to step up whenever these, setbacks come. You got to choose to step up on those to get up to the next level that you need to be at in your life. And I am also apologize for the lighting. I got distracted and I had stuff going on earlier, so I'm kind of having to do this in the dark. So I apologize for that. But last point is don't waste away the gifts that God has given you, because God gives us so many gifts, so many strengths. But I'm called to be a youth pastor. I would not succeed in sports. So I'm called to be youth pastor, but if I tried to go to the NFL, that wouldn't happen. So you don't want to do something that you're not good at, that you're not gifted at, because you're not going to succeed. But God has given you all these strengths and, things that He's given you. So, if we focus on His path, we'll be successful because He's given us the strengths to do whatever He's called us to do. So even though if you know me, you know I'm pretty shy and I struggle with talking in front of people, but I've gotten better. And I will continue to get better because this is what God has called me to do. Normally, I wouldn't even be able to make videos like this, but I've gotten a lot better. You can tell I'm expressive, I'm louder, and I'm really passionate about what I'm doing because I love God and I love the calling that He's given me. And I want to see people saved. I want to see people come to know Jesus. I want to see people receive hope in this dark world, because we're living in a dying, dark world, and we need hope. We need Jesus more than ever right now, and I feel like we're getting less of Him. So this is why I am so thankful that God has given me this calling, because, I never dreamed I would be a pastor ever. Like, when I was younger, I wanted to work with animals, but just all of a sudden, I was 13 years old, wrote a sermon just for the heck of it. It was not as bad as I was thinking, and I heard God's voice in that moment say, "You're going to be a pastor." And I could not be more thankful for the opportunities that God's given me and, everything that He's going to give to me. I just could not be any more thankful. But like I said, if you didn't get anything from this, I would just want you to take away those 3 points. I want you to focus on your next step. Don't look ahead into the future. To reach your destiny, it's all about perspective, and destiny doesn't have an age limit. I want you to focus on those 3. If you didn't get anything else from the video, I want you to focus on those 3 points, and I want you to kind of meditate on that. I want you to think about those, because they are so, so important, and they will motivate us and keep us driven on the right path. So I thank you guys for listening to these. I wouldn't be able to do these if you guys weren't watching. I appreciate the likes. If you dislike it, oh well, I don't care. But if you liked it, thank you. And if you watched it all, thank you. Comment below what you thought. Comment below your prayer request. And if you have a specific, message that you want to hear, comment. I'll do it. So if there's something specific you guys want to hear, just comment below and just let me know and I'll do it. So again, thank you guys. I hope you had a great day today. I hope your week is really good, and I love you guys. Thank you.